Many consider him one of the most outstanding actors of the 20th century. Many women completely lost their heads over him, but not all of his love affairs were destined to become serious relationships. His principles were so important to him that he rejected an Oscar. He's a grieving sufferer under the mask of an eccentric and charismatic rock and roll guy. Today, we will tell the story of the film industry legend, Marlon Brando. Why did Frank Sinatra despise the actor? And why did Al Pacino respect him? Which of Brando's children broke his heart? You are on the Biographer channel. Get comfortable, and we're getting started. Marlon Brando Jr. was born on April 3, 1924 in Omaha. He's the son of Marlon Brando Sr. and Dorothy Julia Pinbaker. Marlon was the third child in the family and had two older sisters, Jocelyn and Frances. Brandon was raised as a Christian Scientist. The boy's ancestors were mostly German, Dutch, English, and Irish. We also know that his father produced pesticides and chemical feed, and the mother, better known as Dodie, was unconventional for her time. She wore pants, smoked, and drove a car. Dorothy was an actress and theater administrator. By the way, she helped Henry Fonda begin his acting career. Sometimes, his mother paid little attention to him because of problems with alcohol. Brando Sr. often brought her home from Chicago bars. Already in his later years, Marlon would write an autobiographical book, Songs My Mother Taught Me, in which he would sadly remember his mother. The anguish that her drinking produced was that she preferred getting drunk to caring for us. Brando's parents became members of Alcoholics Anonymous to solve the problem, but they had not only one problem. Marlon's childhood is a sad period of his life. When he was 4 years old, Brando was sexually abused by his teenage governess. Brando became attached to her, but it was quite a traumatic experience. The boy went crazy when the girl left him, and for the rest of his life, Brando would be stunned by her loss. At the same time, parents cared about their personal problems. Around 1930, they moved to Evanston, Illinois, when his father got a job in Chicago, but separated in 1935 when Marlon was 11 years old. His mother took the three children to Santa Ana, California, where Brando Jr. and his sisters lived with their grandmother. 2 years later, his parents reunited and left Evanston by the following year. They moved to a farm in Libertyville, a small town north of Chicago. Marlon worked as a doorman in a single cinema in the city, the Liberty, from 1939 to 1941. And if he spoke of his mother in his autobiography with sadness, then he had much more unpleasant feelings for his father, for everything that he had to endure. I was his namesake, but nothing I did ever pleased or even interested him. He enjoyed telling me I couldn't do anything right. He had a habit of telling me I would never amount to anything. He hated his father for his callousness. It prompted the guy to find a job as soon as possible and improve his life. Bud, as Marlon was called by childhood friends, had expressive facial expressions from the early years. He developed the ability to absorb the mannerisms of the children he played with and dramatically portray them. At the same time, he was introduced to a neighborhood boy, Wally Cox, and they were the closest friends until Cox's death. In the 2007 biopic, another childhood friend, George England, recalls that in the beginning, Brando imitated the cows and horses on the family farm to distract his mother from drinking. He would not lose that ability throughout his life.
I like David Letterman. Do you ever watch David Letterman?
Yeah, I do. Hi, Dave. I've been an admirer of his for some time.
Dave doesn't do that.
Yeah, but I do it at the mention of his name.
But Marlon did not even think about becoming an actor yet. His sister Jocelyn was the first to begin her acting career and went to study at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City. She played on Broadway, then in films and television. Brando's sister Frances left college in California to study art in New York. Brando showed his creative thinking differently. He was stuck at school for an extra year and then expelled from Libertyville High School for riding his motorcycle down the corridors. Soon, he was sent to the Shattuck Military Academy in Minnesota, where his father studied. Brandon excelled at the theater and did well in school, but continued to do what he wanted. In 1943, in his final year, he was put on probation for disobeying a visiting Army colonel during maneuvers. He was confined in his room but escaped, made his way to the town, and was caught. The faculty voted for his expulsion, but the other students who felt it was too harsh supported him. Marlon was invited back the following year but decided to drop out instead. The guy worked as a ditch digger as a summer job arranged by his father. At the same time, Brando tried to enlist in the army, but his initial medical examination revealed that a football injury he had gotten at Shattuck had left him with a trick knee. Doctors determined him to be physically unfit for military service, so, as IVF, he was not taken to the army. Then, Marlon finally made up his mind and followed his sisters. He went to New York City to study at the American Theater Wing Professional School, part of the dramatic workshop of the new school, with influential German director Erwin Piscator. His sister Jocelyn recalled, "He was in a school play and enjoyed it, so he decided he would go to New York and study acting because that was the only thing he had enjoyed." That was when he was 18. George England recalled Brando starting playing in New York because he was accepted there. He wasn't criticized. It was the first time in his life that he heard good things about himself. However, he did not become rich. In the beginning, Brando had to sleep on the couch with one of his friends. For a time, he lived with Roy Somleo, who later became a hugely successful Broadway producer and a 4-time Emmy Award winner. Marlon was an energetic student and proponent of Stella Adler, from whom he learned the methods of the Stanislavski system. This technique encouraged the actor to study the internal and external aspects of the character being ideally portrayed. Brando's innate insight and sense of realism were evident from the start. As an example, Adler once told the class to act like chickens and added that a nuclear bomb was about to fall on them. Most of the class clucked and ran wildly around, but Brando sat quietly and pretended to lay an egg. Asked by Adler why he chose this reaction, he said, "I'm a chicken. What do I know about bombs?" However, despite the general opinion that Marlon Brando is a method actor, he did not think so. In addition, he recalled that he hated Lee Strasberg's teachings, who was known in creative circles as a talented theater director and acting teacher. Although many had a hand in developing method acting, Lee Strasberg was considered the father of method acting in America. He has mentored several theater generations and film celebrities, including Anne Bancroft, Dustin Hoffman, Montgomery Clift, James Dean, and Marilyn Monroe, who literally idolized Strasberg. Marlon, in turn, claimed the following. "After I had some success, Lee Strasberg tried to take credit for teaching me how to act. He never taught me anything. He would have claimed credit for the sun and the moon if he believed he could get away with it. He was an ambitious, selfish man who exploited the people who attended the actor's studio and tried to project himself as an acting oracle and guru. Some people worshipped him, but I never knew why." The actor recalled that he sometimes visited the actor's studio on Saturday mornings for Elia Kazan exercises, and because there was usually a lot of attractive girls. Strasberg never taught him how to play. Probably because of this, his training quickly paid off. Marlon Brando was the first to bring a natural approach to acting in films. He often chatted with cameramen and other actors on the set, and even after hearing action, he started the role with confidence that he looks natural in the shot. From that moment, his film career began. Brando first showed off his impersonation skills in 2 summer stock roles in Sayville, New York, on Long Island. Brando was a model of erratic, insubordinate behavior, although he participated in only a few performances. Because of his behavior, he was kicked out of the cast of the new school's production at Sayville, but he appeared soon in a locally produced play. Brando often showed his character. In 1944, the actor made his way to Broadway in the bittersweet drama I Remember Mama, playing the son of Mattie Christians. At the same time, the family of directors Alfred Lunt and Lynn Fontanne decided that Marlon could play the role of Alfred Lunt's son in Oh Mistress Mine. Lunt actually coached him before the audition, but Brando didn't even try to read his lines at the audition, and he was rejected. Then he played the role of a suffering veteran in Truckline Cafe. It was a commercial failure, but the New York drama critics named Brando the most promising young actor. There were more and more roles for him. In 1946, Marlon played a heroic role in the political drama A Flag is Born, refusing wages above the actor's equity rate. In that same year, the actor appeared in a revival of Candida and Jean Anouilh's Antigone. He also received an offer to play one of the lead characters in the Broadway premiere of Eugene O'Neill's play The Iceman Cometh. Brando refused. He fell asleep trying to read the massive script and called the play ineptly written and poorly constructed. In 1945, Brando's agent recommended him to play one of the leading roles in the new play, The Eagle Has Two Heads with Tallulah Bankhead. Produced by Jack Wilson, Bankhead recognized Brando's potential, despite her disdain for acting method, which was shared by most Broadway veterans. She agreed to play with Marlon, even though he barely passed the audition. As a result, the two got into a big fight during the pre-Broadway tour when Bankhead reminded Brando of his mother, especially her drinking problem. Wilson was largely tolerant of Brando's behavior, but he reached his limit when Brando mumbled during dress rehearsal shortly before the play's opening, "I don't care what your grandmother did," Wilson exclaimed, "and that method stuff, I want to know what you're going to do." Brando, in turn, raised his voice and acted with great power and passion, and it worked. At the premiere, everyone hugged and kissed Brando, and he only remembered, "They don't think you can act unless you can yell." However, the critics were not so kind. Many commented on Brando's debut that he was still building his character, but at present fails to impress. On subsequent tour performances, he corrected mistakes and received better reviews, but his colleagues recalled only random signs of the talent he would later demonstrate. For example, in an interview in 1962, Bankhead said, "There were a few times when he was really magnificent. He was a great young actor when he wanted to be, but most of the time, I couldn't even hear him on the stage." Gradually on tour, the relationship between the actors deteriorated, and Brando showed his apathy for the production. Marlon decided to surprise everyone with shocking manners on stage. He tried everything in the world to ruin the play for Bankhead and almost drove her crazy, scratched his ass, picked his nose, and did anything on stage. After weeks on the road, they reached Boston, by which time Bankhead was ready to dismiss him. Surprisingly, leaving the production turned out to be one of the greatest blessings of his career, as it brought the actor the role of Stanley Kowalski in Tennessee Williams' 1947 play, A Streetcar Named Desire. Directed by Elia Kazan, Bankhead declined an invitation to the play for Blanche Debussy's role, but also gave a stinging recommendation. "I do have one suggestion for casting. I know of an actor who can appear as this brutish Stanley Kowalski character. I mean, a total pig of a man without sensitivity or grace of any kind. Marlon Brando would be perfect as Stanley. I have just fired the cad from my play. The Eagle Has Two Heads, and I know for a fact that he's looking for work." Brando based his portrayal of Kowalski on boxer Rocky Graziano, whom he studied at a local gymnasium. Graziano did not know who Brando was, but came to the performance with tickets provided by the young man. He said, "The curtain went up, and on stage is that son of a bitch from the gym, and he's playing me." It was the first Brando success because in 1947, he took part in the screen test of an early screenplay by Warner Brothers for the film adaptation of the novel Rebel Without a Cause. Unfortunately, they did not give results. The movie was released only after 8 years, and it was a completely different film. But soon, Marlon Brando still made his debut on the big screen. The actor's first screen role was a paraplegic veteran in the 1950 film The Men, directed by Fred Zinnemann. The actor spent a month in bed at the Birmingham Army Hospital in Van Nuys to prepare for the role. Critics were struck by the range of feelings Brando conveyed and how dynamic and real his character was. According to Marlon, it was probably because of this film that his serviceability status was changed from IVF to 1A. He had surgery on his trick knee, and it was no longer physically unfit for the draft for the Army. But for obvious reasons, during the Korean War, Brando avoided military service. When the actor arrived at the induction center, he answered a questionnaire with particular carefulness. He indicated that his race was human, his color was seasonal oyster white to beige, and told the Army doctor that he was psychoneurotic. When the draft board referred him to a psychiatrist, Brando explained that he had been expelled from military school and had serious problems with the authority. In his autobiography, Songs My Mother Taught Me, Brando recalls the first time he met Marilyn Monroe at a party where she played the piano. Then she was unknown to anyone. They began an affair, and even for many years after that, they would periodically maintain relations. During the same period, Marlon, for the first time in his career, began to use cue cards instead of memorizing his lines. Some directors were against it, as it is usually used by actors with memory problems like Bruce Willis in the last years of his career. But Brando felt it helped bring realism and spontaneity to his performances. He believed otherwise, he would look like a reciting writer's style. If you don't know what the words are, but you have a general idea of what they are, then you look at the cue card and it gives you the feeling to the viewer, hopefully, that the person is really searching for what he's going to say, that he doesn't know what to say. By the way, if you're interested in Bruce Willis's career and his ups and downs, watch the video on our channel using the link in the upper right corner of the screen, or write in the comments whose biography you would be interested to know. Soon, cast and crew remained the same, including director Elia Kazan, but Vivien Leigh was new to actor category. In his autobiography, director Woody Allen recalled the film and praised every aspect of its production, therein about Brando. And Marlon Brando was a living poem. He was an actor who came on the scene and changed the history of acting. The magic, the setting, New Orleans, the French Quarter, the rainy, humid afternoons, the poker night. Artistic genius, no holds barred. Marlon's career growth was stunning. After a year, he received his second Oscar nomination for his role in the film Viva Zapata, an artistically embellished story about the life of the Mexican revolutionary Emiliano Zapata. The movie tells about his upbringing in the lower class, coming to power in the early 20th century, and death. Anthony Quinn became Brando's partner on the set, and Elia Kazan was the director. To create tension between the on-screen actors, the director told Quinn, who took over the role of Stanley Kowalski on Broadway after Brando, that he was unimpressed by his performance. It's sad, but they achieved the result. Kazan never told Quinn that he lied. Tony Quinn, whom I admired professionally and liked personally, played my brother, but he was extremely cold to me while we shot that picture. During our scenes together, I sensed a bitterness towards me, and if I suggested a drink after work, he either turned me down or was sullen and said little. Only years later did I learn why. Marlon continued to use his method of preparing for the role. Secretly, before filming started, he went to Mexico, to the very city where Zapata was born and lived. There, the actor studied people's speech patterns, behavior, and movements. Apparently, that influenced the assessments of critics. Most of them focused on Brando rather than on film. Great reviews appeared in Time and Newsweek magazines. A year later, the actor's new film was Julius Caesar. It was an almost exact adaptation of Shakespeare's play, in which Brando played the role of Mark Antony. It was produced for Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and directed by the younger of two brothers, Joseph Leah Mankiewicz. Brando delivered an impressive performance, especially everyone noted his speech.
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones. So let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you Caesar was ambitious.
The film received extremely positive reviews and was nominated in 5 categories at the 26th Academy Awards, including Best Picture and another Best Actor for Brando. Everyone pointed to the film that sooner or later he would have to receive it. In the meantime, the actor won a second BAFTA award for Best Foreign Actor. Interestingly, during the filming of Julius Caesar, Brando learned that Elia Kazan had cooperated with congressional investigators naming a number of subversives to the House Committee on Un-American Activities, HUAC. Marlon was stunned and upset by the mentor's decision, but continued to work with him. Later, they would reunite on the set of the new film. In the same 1953, Brando starred in the crime film The Wild One, riding his own Triumph Thunderbird 6T motorcycle. And there were several consequences associated with this at once. Triumph sellers did not like the representation of their brand due to the presence in the film of rowdy motorcycle gangs taking over a small town. It was criticized for such gratuitous violence. Time magazine even stated, "The effect of the movie is not to throw light on the public problem, but to shoot adrenaline through the moviegoer's veins." But at the same time, Brando was extremely surprised that the film influenced young people. His motorcycle riding and looks inspired teen rebellion. The movie made him a role model to the nascent rock and roll generation and future stars like James Dean and Elvis Presley. After the film's release, sales of leather jackets and motorcycles skyrocketed. Years later, the actor recalled, "More than most parts I've played in the movies or on stage, I related to Johnny. And because of this, I believe I played him as more sensitive and sympathetic than the script envisioned. There's a line in the picture where he snarls, 'Nobody tells me what to do.' That's exactly how I've felt all my life." By 1954, Brando had become a real Hollywood star. During that period, he was surrounded by women and even dated several at one time. He had a whirlwind romance with actress Rita Moreno. When she became pregnant, the actor insisted on an abortion, which was unsuccessful. At that time, Marlon had already fallen in love with Tarita Teripaya, and Moreno attempted to kill herself.
I know that Marlon was a horribly damaged person by the time I met him. His mother was an alcoholic, his father drank, and she disappointed him constantly over and over and over. So he kept either punishing women for having the capacity to do that to men, and he kept punishing himself by finding women who were very often not reliable. Interesting, yes?
And yes, indeed, and tragic in the sense that it even drove you to attempt suicide while you were with him.
It did. It was my way, twisted and sick as it was, to try to end that kind of humiliation and pain. I just didn't know how else to do it because I kept going back to him.
At the same time, Brando participated in the summer comedy production of Arms and the Man by George Bernard Shaw, but it was just the beginning compared to what success awaited him. That year became a turning point in Marlon Brando's career. Marlon felt the rise of popularity, and his career moved up in 1954. The actor starred in Elia Kazan's new film, the crime drama On the Waterfront. When Brando received the role offer, he was stung by Kazan's testimony to HUAC, was outraged, and initially refused the offer. Terry Malloy's role nearly went to Frank Sinatra. The director believed that Sinatra, who grew up in Hoboken, where the film took place and was filmed, was a perfect fit for the role. Frank even attended the initial costume fitting, but the producers persuaded Brando by signing a contract with him for $100,000. Kazan didn't mind. According to him, he always preferred Brando over the rest. He even allowed him to improvise since Marlon did not like the implausibility of the scene where, according to the script, his character spoke with a gun for a long time. After filming, Kazan expressed admiration for Brando's instinctive understanding of the movie, an unusual contrast between the rough guy and the extreme delicacy and gentleness of his behavior. Marlon himself was rather dismissive of his speech. On the day Gad showed me the complete picture, I was so depressed by my performance I got up and left the screening room. I thought I was a huge failure. Critics were delighted and praised the film very highly, calling it an unusually powerful, exciting, and creative use of the screen by professionals. When the film critic Roger Ebert watched the film years later, he praised it, stating that Brando and Kazan changed acting and cinema forever. The box office was extremely successful. The film grossed $9.6 million.
Wait a minute. All right, you're nominated.
Well, why me, Charlie? I feel funny going down there. Besides, I'd just be stooling for you.
Let me tell you what stooling is. Stooling.
For the role of Terry Malloy, Marlon Brando was nominated for an Oscar for the fourth year in a row and finally received a statuette. It was his sixth film, fourth nomination, and first Oscar. It is difficult to imagine a more rapid career rise. In those years, the competition in the film industry was not at the nowadays level, but we should not underestimate Marlon's talent. He deserved the Oscar. However, after that, Brando seemed to relax. He was still a commercially attractive actor, but critics were less and less flattering about him. They lacked the intensity and focus found in Marlon's earlier work, especially with Elia Kazan. So, in 1954, he portrayed Napoleon in the historical biographical film Desiree. He put little effort into the role, claiming he did not like the script and later dismissed the entire film as superficial and dismal. Brando was especially contemptuous of director Henry Koster, probably for his pedantry and interest in studying the personality of Napoleon. The actor agreed to star in Desiree due to a legal contract. He had previously turned down the lead role in the same year's film The Egyptian and was forced to star in this. Gene Simmons was Marlon's colleague on the project. Later, they starred in the film adaptation of the musical Guys and Dolls.
Comes along. Mine will come as a surprise to me. Mine, I leave to chance and chemistry.
Chemistry?
Yeah, chemistry.
Guys and Dolls was Brando's first and last musical role. The film was different from the original musical. Critics described Marlon as sings in a faraway tenor that sometimes tends to be flat. In Edward Murrow's person-to-person interview that year, he admitted to having a problem with his singing voice. He called it pretty terrible. In fact, the sound we heard in the film was the result of countless singing takes that were combined into one. I couldn't hit a note with a baseball bat. Some notes I missed by extraordinary margins. They sewed my words together on one song so tightly that when I mouthed it in front of the camera, I nearly asphyxiated myself. At the same time, relations between Marlon Brando and his co-star Frank Sinatra were frosty. The two men were diametrically opposites. Marlon needed multiple takes, and Frank hated to repeat himself. As a result, a conflict arose between them. The actors constantly exchanged caustic comments. When they first met, Sinatra chuckled. "Don't give me any of that actor's studio shit," he said. Brandon later replied, "Frank is the kind of guy when he dies, he's going to heaven and give God a hard time for making him bald." Probably after that, Sinatra called Brando the world's most overrated actor and referred to him as Mumbles. Critics gave mixed reviews for the film, but the commercial success of Guys and Dolls was assured.
And if I were a watch, I'd start popping my spring.
During that time, the actor was engaged to 19-year-old French actress Josanne Mariani, but they soon broke off the engagement when Brando's other girlfriend, Anna Kashfi, became pregnant. Brando and Kashfi met in 1955. The actress was born to a British family in colonial India. As a result of the affair, Kashfi became pregnant. They got married in 1958, and soon, on May 11th of the same year, their son Christian was born in Los Angeles. And in a year, the couple divorced, and it would be the only divorce for the actor. Christian rushed between his mother and father. His parents became increasingly hostile and abusive towards each other and engaged in a protracted custody battle. The courts and the uncontrollable nature of the mother due to drug and alcohol abuse influenced the young Christian. Meanwhile, Marlon played several military roles. First, in 1956, he played Sakini, a Japanese interpreter for the U.S. Army in post-war Japan in The Tea House of the August Moon. Preparing for the role, Brando starved himself and liked the stunt. He spoke with a crazy accent, grinning boyishly, and made tricky foot movements. The next year, Marlon appeared in the Technicolor drama film Sayonara as a United States Air Force fighter pilot during the Korean War who fell in love with a famous Japanese dancer. He used an unscripted Southern accent for the character over the objections of director Joshua Logan. Logan would later say in an interview, "I've never worked with such an exciting, inventive actor. So pliable. He takes direction beautifully, and yet he always has something to add. He's made up this Southern accent for the part. I never would have thought of it myself, but, well, it's exactly right. It's perfection." The film was controversial due to openly discussing interracial marriages, but proved a great success, earning 10 Academy Award nominations, including Brando's Best Actor nomination. The movie managed to win 4 Oscars, and although Marlon didn't get an award, he did not leave empty-handed. His manager, Jay Cantor, signed a lucrative contract, according to which Brando got 10% of the film's box office. It automatically made him a millionaire, since the movie grossed over $26 million at the box office. By the way, Tea House and Sayonara were the first in a string of films Brando would strive to make over the next decade, in which contained socially relevant messages. He wanted to make films with social value that would improve the world. Marlon partnered with Paramount to establish his own production company called Penbaker. He chose this name as a tribute to his mother, who had died in 1954. The actor was devastated by her death. According to biographer Peter Manso, she was the one who could give him approval like no one else could. And after his mother died, it seemed that Marlon stopped caring. Brando appointed his father to run Penbaker because it gave Marlon a chance to take shots at him, to demean and diminish him. In 1954, Brando appeared in the epic World War II drama film The Young Lions, based on the Irwin Shaw novel of the same name. The film was directed by Edward Dimtrick, and Montgomery Clift and Dean Martin were Marlon's co-stars. Unfortunately, the gorgeous trio is never seen together in the same shot during the film, because their scenes were filmed at different times. For the role, Brando dyed his hair blonde and prepared a German accent, but he later admitted that the attempt wasn't convincing. The actor made his adjustments to the script. The original script closely followed the book, in which Shaw painted all Germans as evil caricatures, especially Christian, whom he portrayed as a symbol of everything that was bad about Nazism. He was mean, nasty, vicious, a cliché of evil. I thought the story should demonstrate that there are no inherently bad people in the world, but they can be easily misled. The film was successful commercially, and critics were pleased with it. Abel Green of Variety positively reviewed the movie, describing it as a full-fledged blockbuster. At the end of the decade, the actor starred in the film The Fugitive Kind, along with Anna Magnani and Joanne Woodward. The film was based on another Tennessee Williams play, but not as successful as A Streetcar Named Desire. By the end of 1960, Marlon Brando's success was not incredible. The actor surprised the audience less and less, and his films turned out to be mediocre. But it was too early to write off such talent, maybe after some time. That same year, Brando married Mexican-American actress Movida Castaneda. A year later, they had a child, Miko Castaneda Brando. And 5 years later, their daughter, Rebecca Brando, was born. But in 1968, their marriage was annulled after it turned out that Castaneda's previous marriage was still valid. In 1961, a rather interesting story happened. At the end of the last decade, work on the western One-Eyed Jacks, with Marlon Brando playing the lead role, began. The film was an adaptation of the novel The Authentic Death of Hendry Jones by Charles Nader, and the adaptation never worked out. Marlon Brando's Penbaker Productions paid $40,000 for the rights to The Authentic Death and then signed Stanley Kubrick to direct the film for Paramount Pictures. Kubrick in those years was not yet a respectful director in the 70s. He took on the project, but while Brando constantly changed screenwriters, Kubrick, for unknown reasons, was fired just 2 weeks before filming began. Then the actor volunteered to take the post, and Paramount made him the director. It is worth saying that Kubrick at the same time worked on the film adaptation of Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov, and his career went uphill, but Marlon was not easy. Brando's penchant for retakes and character exploration as an actor carried over into his directing, and soon the film was over-budgeted by 2 times. Paramount expected the film to take 3 months to complete, but filming stretched to 6 and cost over $6 million. Brando's inexperience as an editor also delayed post-production, and Paramount eventually took control of the film. Marlon did his best while working on the film because he should play and direct the filming. He filmed 5 hours of additional scenes, but many of them were not used. Exhausted by filming, the actor realized he did not want to be a director. He never directed films again, only starred. You work yourself to death. You're the first one up in the morning. I mean, we shot the whole thing on the run, you know? You make up the dialogue of the scene before, improvising, and your brain is going crazy. The script was different from the novel. Karl Malden was the only actor in the film who, according to Paramount, did not lie in comparison with the original source. When he was asked who actually wrote the One-Eyed Jack's story, he replied, "There was one answer to your question. Marlon Brando, a genius in our time." Critics met One-Eyed Jacks with mixed reviews, and due to the doubled budget, the film was a commercial failure. However, over time it has become a cult film and has been mentioned in culture more than once. First in the TV series Twin Peaks and the computer game Cyberpunk 2077. In 2016, the film was shown as part of the Cannes Classics section at the 2016 Cannes Film Festival. A 4K restored version, supervised by Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, and the Film Foundation, was there. "This is visually stunning, what he did," said Scorsese, introducing the restored version. It's kind of a cross between the old style of production and the new styles that were going to come in the 60s. The essence of it is of the old Hollywood, in a way. But Brando was burned out and disgusted with the film industry, and it would have a negative impact in the future.
That's a pretty good start.
The actor was accused of deliberately sabotaging almost anything related to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's remake of Mutiny on the Bounty. In an article in the Saturday Evening Post titled $6 Million Down the Drain, The Mutiny of Marlon Brando, the filmmaker commented, "The executives deserve what they get when they give a ham actor, a petulant child, complete control over an expensive picture." The movie didn't ruin Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's economy, though it would have lost about $55 million nowadays. Although the project was hindered by numerous delays, sometimes unrelated to Brando's behavior, many studios began to fear the actor's difficult reputation. Critics pointed out his constantly fluctuating weight, and all those accusations accompanied the actor for years. While working on Mutiny on the Bounty, the actor fulfilled his long-standing dream. He finally visited Tahiti.
I had fallen in love with Tahiti. It was everything I longed for, everything I hoped it would be.
Disappointed in his career, Brando became distracted by his personal life and considered acting as a means to achieve financial goals. French actress Tarita Taripaya, who portrayed Brando's love in the film, became the actor's third wife on August 10, 1962. She was 18 years younger than Marlon. Tarita was only 20 years old, but the actor liked her naivety. Thanks to Tarita, Marlon fluently spoke French, gave interviews in it, and eventually used it in his career. The couple, who would have 2 children, Simon Tayoto Brando and Tarita Cheyenne Brando. Despite the couple's divorce in 1972, Marlon adopted Terry Paya's child, Mayamiti Brando, and niece, Raiatua Brando. Critics protested when he started accepting roles in films many considered unworthy of his talent, or because he could not match the better roles. But the actor's opinion was different.
What's the difference? See, that's a part of the sickness in America, that you have to think in terms of who wins, who loses, who's good, who's bad, who's best, who's worst. We always think in those terms, in the extreme terms. I don't like to think that way. Everybody has their own value in a different way, and I don't like to think who was the best at this or that. I mean, what's the point of it?
Previously, Marlon signed short-term deals with film studios, but in 1961, the actor signed a 5-film deal with Universal Studios. A contract would torment him for the rest of the decade. There were the adventure film The Ugly American, the comedy Bedtime Story, the spy war film Morituri, the western The Appaloosa, the romantic comedy A Countess from Hong Kong, and the technicolor crime film The Night of the Following Day. Failed at the box office, and disappointed Brando himself. Just The Ugly American had positive reviews from critics, and the actor was nominated for a Golden Globe for his performance, but the stronger contender won that year. The actor was lucky enough to work with his sister, Jocelyn Brando, and ex-girlfriend, actress Reiko Sato, who was chosen at Brando's insistence. But most of all, the actor was disappointed with The Countess from Hong Kong, a romantic comedy film scored, written, and directed by Charlie Chaplin, with whom the actor was looking forward to working. It was the last film of a no longer young legend. Brando's partners on the set were Sophia Loren and Sidney Chaplin, the second son of Charlie Chaplin and Lita Grey. The director also appeared in the frame, playing a small role. Chaplin was one of Brando's heroes, until that moment. But the experience was unsuccessful. Brando was horrified at Chaplin's didactic leadership style and his authoritarian approach. The director literally showed the actors on their fingers what they must do. Many appreciated Chaplin's unusual approach, but Marlon Brando felt humiliated and wanted to leave the project before the end of filming. The director hardly managed to convince him to stay. The actor considered him a fearsomely cruel man, especially drawing attention to how cruelly Charlie treated his son Sidney, who had a supporting role. Chaplin was an egotistical tyrant and a penny pincher. He harassed people when they were late and scolded them unmercifully to work faster. Chaplin was probably the most sadistic man I'd ever met. The film production was often interrupted and postponed due to Brando's standard lateness and his unexpected hospitalization with appendicitis. In addition, during the filming, Chaplin and Brando managed to get the flu, and Sophia Loren got married.
Now, what are you going to have for breakfast?
Oh, anything, sir. 2 boiled eggs, 4 minutes, a little bacon, toast, and coffee.
Eggs, bacon, toast, and coffee.
At the same time, in 1968, Marlon Brando managed to star in the sex farce film directed by Christian Marquand, Candy. Colleagues in misfortune were Ewa Holland, Charles Aznavour, Richard Burton, James Coburn, John Huston, Walter Matthau, and Ringo Starr. In addition, the film has a cameo of several other well-known figures in those years. The film satirized pornographic stories through the adventures of the naive heroine Candy, played by Ewa Holland. According to production manager Gray Fredrickson, in the so-called Grindle attempts to seduce Candy scene, Marlon Brando tried to actually have sex with Ewa Holland on camera. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, there is no evidence of this. Candy became one of the many psychedelic films that emerged in the late 60s. Overall, reviews from critics were positive. The box office was average, and later it would become a cult classic of the psychedelic films of those years. But the actor admitted his professional decline in those years. In his later autobiography, Brando wrote, "Some of the films I made during the 60s were successful. Some weren't. Some, like The Night of the Following Day, I made only for the money. Others, like Candy, I did because a friend asked me to and I didn't want to turn him down. In some ways, I think of my middle age as the f*** you years." In March 1966, Pauline Kael wrote in The Atlantic that in the days of rebelliousness, Brando was antisocial because he knew society was crap. He was a hero to youth because he was strong enough not to take the crap. But now Brando and others like him had become buffoons, shamelessly, pathetically mocking their public reputations. Other critics were no less emphatically and, one might say, condescendingly write off Marlon's career, and the actor tried not to show that it hurt him.
It hits you every day, and you have no way of fighting back. I was very convincing in my pose of indifference. but I was very sensitive and it hurt a lot.
In the same period, there were other slightly more noticeable works. For example, the actor played the role of Major in Reflections in a Golden Eye, directed by John Huston and co-starring Elizabeth Taylor. The role turned out to be one of the most famous in years. Brando managed to portray a silent but stoically cheerful person crushed by circumstances. The Chase was another significant film for the actor in 1966. The film deals with themes of racism, the sexual revolution, small-town corruption, and the problem of lynching. The film was received mostly positively and allowed Marlon to work with Arthur Penn, Jane Fonda, Robert Redford, and Robert Duvall. Burn, 1969, was his personal favorite film of that era. Marlon considered the role in the movie one of the best in his career, although few people came to the cinema and watched it.
William Walker. Permit me. Henry Thompson. This is Jack Martin.
Nice to know you, sir.
Pleasure.
You're a hard man to trace, Sir William. We've been halfway around Europe just trying to find you.
That's rather flattering. There are those who need you.
I can assure you that I don't need them.
The actor called Gillo Pontecorvo the best director he had ever worked with, after Kazan and Bernardo Bertolucci. Difficult working conditions pushed the production over schedule and budget, and the United States almost fired Pontecorvo. Marlon Brando insisted that the film be finished and paid to move production to Morocco, where it could be finished for less money. By that time, Marlon had finally won custody of his son Christian, who was already 13 years old. During that period, Marlon described his son as a basket case of emotional disorder. Marlon was not a good father and spent little time with young Christian, who was mostly raised by nannies and servants due to Brando's filming. Christian traveled between Hollywood and Tetiaroa, his father's private island off Tahiti. Marlon continued to have relationships with several women with whom he had numerous children. Years later, commenting on his childhood, Christian would recall, "The family kept changing shape. I'd sit down at the breakfast table and say, 'Who are you?'" Over the years, the actor had more and more children, but he did not pay attention to them. He also had never seen some of his grandchildren. We know just a little about Marlon's attitude to his children, only that he always spent part of his earnings on their support, and only 20 years later, at a hearing in the courtroom of Christian's case, he would regret, "I think that perhaps I failed as a father. Certainly there were things I could have done differently, if I had known better at the time." In addition to solving family problems and acting, Brando made a couple of socio-political statements. In the autumn of 1967, he visited Helsinki, where he met the First Lady of Finland and attended the UNICEF charity party at the Helsinki City Theatre. He spoke about the famine in Bihar, India, presented a film shot there, and talked about children's rights and the necessary assistance in developing countries. And after the murder of Martin Luther King Jr., Marlon pledged to promote King's work. He announced that he was turning down the lead role in Elia Kazan's new film, The Arrangement, to devote himself to the civil rights movement. I felt I'd better go find out where it is, what it is to be black in this country, what this rage is all about. By the early 70s, Marlon Brando had already gone through the worst recession of his career and was considered out of the box office. The actor hasn't appeared in a box office hit since The Young Lions in 1958, the last year he was on the top 10 box office stars. But fate gave Marlon a second chance, and soon he began to receive offers which gradually revived his acting and star status. Before we move on to a more successful stage in the actor's life, subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so, and be sure to press the bell to find out the most interesting facts from the life of your idols first. Subscribe, and we'll continue. In 1971, Marlon Brando was nominated for the BAFTA Awards for Best Actor for his role in the upcoming British horror film directed by Michael Winner, The Nightcomers, but it was only a warm-up before a return to the screens. During that time, Mario Puzo's 1969 novel The Godfather had long been on the New York Times bestseller list, and Paramount Pictures noted it. Moreover, the studio knew about it even at the stage of the 60-page manuscript. 2 years before the release, the studio supported the book's release and hoped to make a film based on it. Work on the film adaptation began next year. Paramount Pictures was looking for a director with Italian roots. Initially, it was supposed to be Sergio Leone, but he worked on his film Once Upon a Time in America. After a long search, Francis Ford Coppola became the director, but at first, he did not agree. He considered the book rather sloppy and realized that the film should not be about organized crime, but a family chronicle and a metaphor for capitalism in America. Mario Puzo was interested in having Marlon Brando portray Don Vito Corleone, sending the actor a letter stating that Brando was, quote, the only actor who could play the Godfather. Despite Puzo's wishes, Brando was opposed by Paramount management due to poor performance in his recent films and his short temper. Coppola preferred Brando or Laurence Olivier, while Paramount considered Orson Welles the best candidate. After months of debate between Coppola and Paramount, they invited Marlon Brando for a screen test. The actor wanted his character to look like a bulldog, so he seriously prepared. For makeup, Marlon tucked cotton balls up his cheeks, smeared shoe polish on his hair to darken it, and rolled up his collar. Coppola placed Brando's audition footage in the middle of the rest of the auditions. When Paramount's management watched them, they were impressed with Brando's efforts and allowed Coppola to cast him if Marlon agreed to a lower salary and posted bail to ensure he would not cause production delays. In addition to the existing ones, Brando did not cause new delays, but he behaved as usual on the set. In an early shot of the scene where Vito Corleone returned home as his men carried him up the stairs, the actor jokingly put weights under his body on the bed to make it harder to lift him. As you know, Brando continued to use cue cards. Some colleagues seriously wondered if Brando used them out of laziness or inability to remember his lines. So, on the set of The Godfather, he was asked why he wanted printed lines, and he replied, "Because I can read them that way." By the way, the cat that Marlon Brando is holding in the opening scene was not originally intended in the script and was homeless. Coppola found it in the parking lot at Paramount Pictures. The cat was so pleased that its purring drowned out some of Brando's lines, and some had to be looped.
It was a studio cat, and I just put it in his hand. He would never say, "What do you want me to do?" I joked that, like, if he's in a scene, Brando was in a scene, and a herd of buffalo ran by in character, he would say, "Oh, look at the buffalo." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He would make use of anything. Yeah. He was great. He was a genius.
Also, there was no slap in the face that Vito gave Johnny Fontaine. It was improvised by Marlon Brando. On screen, we see Al Martino's real bewildered reaction. According to James Caan, Martino didn't know whether to laugh or cry.
Godfather, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
You can act like a man! What's the matter with you? Is this how you turned out a Hollywood Pinocchio that cries like a woman? What can I do? What can I do?
The result was stunning. The Godfather received critical acclaim and is considered one of the greatest and most influential films. The ratings were at their best, especially praising the cast and Coppola's work. Commercially, the film became the most successful at that time and grossed about $290 million at the worldwide box office. The film received 7 nominations at the 30th Golden Globe Awards, among which Marlon Brando won Best Actor, Drama. Similarly, the film succeeded in the 45th Academy Awards, and Marlon Brando won the Best Actor award. But the actor himself was not present at the 2 award ceremonies. Moreover, he boycotted the ceremony and refused to accept the Oscar. It's funny that Pacino, who had more screen time than Brando, was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor and not Best Actor. He was offended and also boycotted the ceremony, but Al Pacino did not hold a grudge against his colleague and recalled him warmly, remembering how Marlon helped him with the role of Michael Corleone.
It was different than anything we'd all seen, so it was playing with him in the movie.
What was
I'll
that
get
like?
to that answer. It was a little
nervous,
a little unnerving. You know, you don't know, and Marlon would play that a little bit. You know, he was odd. Yeah, but he was so good to me. He was so sensitive to the condition because I was in a precarious condition, to say the least, because they were going to let me go.
Brando sent American Indian rights activist Sachin Littlefeather to the Oscars instead. From the stage, she announced the reasons for Brando's refusal of the award, to which half of those present reacted badly and the other half supported with applause.
I'm representing Marlon Brando this evening, and he has asked me to tell you in a very long speech, which I cannot share with you presently because of time, but I will be glad to share with the press afterwards.
The Wounded Knee occupation of 1973 was during the ceremony. Brando hoped that his rejection would be considered a serious attempt to draw attention to an issue that could determine whether the country has the right to say that its citizens believe in the right of all people to remain free and independent in the lands that have sustained them for centuries.
But I don't think that people generally realize what the motion picture industry has done to the American Indian. As a matter of fact, all ethnic groups
all minorities, all non-whites.
Also, in 1972, Marlon appeared in Bernardo Bertolucci's cult erotic drama, Glass Tango in Paris. The actor's co-star was Maria Schneider. Brando portrayed a newly minted American widower, Paul, who begins an anonymous sexual relationship with a young betrothed Parisian woman named Jean. It is worth noting that the world has changed a lot over the past 50 years, and today many scenes of the film would not have been filmed. For example, there's a scene in which Paul rapes Jean, and although it was modeled, Maria Schneider felt the negative impact even years later. In the 2000s, the actress admitted in an interview that this scene was not in the script and she found out about it only before the start of filming. I should have called my agent or had my lawyer come to the set because you can't force someone to do something that isn't in the script, but at the time I didn't know that. Marlon said to me, "Maria, don't worry, it's just a movie." But during the scene, even though what Marlon was doing wasn't real, I was crying real tears. I felt humiliated, and to be honest, I felt a little raped, both by Marlon and by Bertolucci. After the scene, Marlon didn't console me or apologize. And although Brando did not apologize to her, in general, they had a close relationship and remained friends after filming, unlike Bertolucci, who manipulated the actress throughout the filming. As in his previous film projects, Brando refused to memorize the lines in many scenes and instead wrote them on cards, posted them around the set, and made it difficult for Bertolucci to keep them out of the frame. For example, during his monologue over his wife's body, Marlon's spectacular eye up is not a spontaneous dramatic act, but a search for the next clue. The actor even asked Bertolucci if he could write lines on Maria's rear end, but he forbade him. Bertolucci even filmed a scene that showed Marlon's genitals, but he identified with Brando so much that he cut it out of shame. Showing Brando's naked would be like showing himself naked. The actor said he felt raped and manipulated. He was 48 years old, and he was still Marlon Brando. After the film's release in Italy, a criminal case was opened against the film for unfounded, aggravated pansexual. The final decision of the Court of Appeal decided to confiscate the film from the Censorship Commission and destroy all copies. In addition, scriptwriter Franco Arcali, producer Alberto Grimaldi, director Bernardo Bertolucci, and Marlon Brando were on suspended sentences for 2 months. Many other countries also banned or wanted to ban The Last Tango in Paris. They cut out the sodomy scene, but the hype was incredible. People were already ready to queue for hours for tickets, especially after the ban announcement. By the way, the price of tickets has tripled. To get around the censorship in Spain, people drove hundreds of miles to France to watch a movie.
Mais je suis venu pour te rapporter la clé, moi. Pour vous rapporter la clé. Je m'en fous de la clé. Allez, enlève ton manteau.
For participation in the film, Brando received an Academy Award nomination. In his autobiography, he admitted that even years later, he couldn't figure out what Last Tango in Paris was about. The film required him to have a lot of emotional struggle, and Marlon decided that he would never again destroy himself to make the film. But in 1973, things didn't get easier for him. The actor was devastated by the death of his childhood best friend, Wally Cox. Brando even slept in Cox's pajamas and wrenched his ashes from his widow. She was going to sue the actor, but finally decided he needed him more. In 1976, Brando appeared in the western The Missouri Breaks with his friend Jack Nicholson. The actors were so close that someone even saw something more in it. In this regard, Marlon Brando told a French journalist, "Homosexuality is so much in fashion it no longer makes news. Like a large number of men, I, too, have had homosexual experiences, and I am not ashamed. I have never paid much attention to what people think about me, but if there is someone who's convinced that Jack Nicholson and I are lovers, may they continue to do so. I find it amusing." The Missouri Breaks was directed by Arthur Penn, with whom he had previously worked. Penn struggled to control Brando, who seemed intent on crossing the line as a border ruffian turned contract killer Robert E. Lee Clayton. He changed his character's features several times throughout the filming. After the Oscar-winning roles of Brando and Nicholson in The Godfather and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the film was highly anticipated and became a critical and commercial failure. With a budget of $10 million, the film grossed only $14 million. The Sun noted, "Marlon Brando, at 52, has the sloppy belly of a 62-year-old, the white hair of a 72-year-old, and the lack of discipline of a precocious 12-year-old." In fact, everything was already going to the logical end in the actor's career, but Marlon Brando had not yet said everything he wanted and continued to act. In 1978, Brando narrated the English version of Rayoni, a Franco-Belgian documentary film directed by Jean-Pierre Dutillot and Luis Carlos Saldana that focused on the life of the Rayoni Motoktar and the problems associated with the survival of indigenous Indian tribes in north-central Brazil. At that time, Brando played Superman's father, Jor-El, in the film Superman. It's amazing how cinema has changed over the years, from black and white adaptations of Broadway plays to the visually stunning Last Tango in Paris and comic book adaptations. And Marlon was lucky to see and act in it. He accepted the role only on the assurance that he would be paid a large amount for a small part, that he would not have to read the script in advance, and that his lines would be shown somewhere behind the scenes, which everyone was already used to. He was paid $3.7 million for 2 weeks of work, plus nearly 12% of box office gross. It was probably his easiest $20 million.
He'll be odd. Different. He'll be fast.
Interestingly, along with Superman, they shot Superman 2 at the same time. Brando also filmed scenes for the sequel, but after the producers refused to pay him the same percentage he received for the first film, he denied them permission to use the footage. However, after Brando's death, the footage was re-included in the 2006 re-release of Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut. In 1979, Marlon appeared in the miniseries Roots: The Next Generations, portraying George Lincoln Rockwell. Unexpectedly, the actor won a Primetime Emmy Award, but a significant role that year came after that. Francis Ford Coppola invited the actor to play the lead role in the epic war film Apocalypse Now. The story was based on the 1899 novel Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, but they transferred the events of the late 19th century Congo to the time of the Vietnam War. Marlon Brando worked with Robert Duvall and Martin Sheen. Film production was repeatedly halted, for example, due to surprises like Typhoon Olga, which destroyed more than half of the sets in Iba, and because Marlon Brando didn't want to work while his kids were on school holidays. The actor delayed filming for 3 months, as a result of which Harvey Keitel left the project and Martin Sheen replaced him. Moreover, Marlon did not get along with Dennis Hopper and refused to be on the set with him at the same time. At the beginning of filming in July 1976, Marlon arrived in Manila overweight and, together with Coppola, they decided to rewrite the ending. The actor turned out to be too plump to play the original ending. The director disguised Brando's weight by dressing him in black and filming only his face. He also hired a taller stunt double to portray Marlon as an almost mythical character in the story. The filming was so insane that Martin Sheen had a near-fatal heart attack and miraculously survived the quarter-mile before being taken to the hospital. For the staff, real human corpses were bought from a man who turned out to be a grave robber. Someone reported it to the police, they interrogated the film crew, and soon the military took away the bodies, and the extras had to pretend to be corpses in the film.
It's impossible through words to describe what is necessary.
Marlon Brando improvised most of the dialogue, including "You're an errand boy," sent by grocery clerks to collect a bill, and an 18-minute monologue of which only 2 minutes remain in the film. At some point, he told Coppola that he went as far as possible, and if the director needed more, he could find another actor instead of him. But that was enough. It premiered at the Cannes Film Festival, where the film won the Palme d'Or. At the Oscars, out of 8 nominations, it won Best Cinematography and Best Sound, but Brando didn't even get a nomination. Probably someone decided not to award the actor after his previous rejection. Today, critics consider the film the masterpiece of the new Hollywood era and the best war film of all time. Brando's career began to gradually turn to an end. The actor no longer appeared in major commercial projects and increasingly appeared in the news because of family problems and his growing obesity. After the role of oil tycoon Adam Stifel in the film The Formula, 1980, which was poorly received critically and earned him a Golden Raspberry nomination, Marlon announced his retirement from acting. However, 9 years later, he returned in the 1989 drama A Dry White Season. The film was based on Andre Brink's anti-apartheid novel, and Brando agreed to star in it for free. He did not know that later he would quarrel with the director, Yuzan Palsi, because of how he would edit it. Palsi had cut the picture so poorly, I thought that the inherent drama of this conflict was vague at best. But that didn't stop critics from praising Marlon Brando's performance, awarding him the Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor, and winning the Best Actor award at the Tokyo Film Festival. The actor also received rave reviews from his caricature of Vito Corleone as Carmine Sabatini in the 1990 crime comedy The Freshman. The idea came to director Andrew Bergman after reading a newspaper article about a mafioso arrested for smuggling a near-extinct lizard into the United States. The most fun I ever had was once Marlon Brando committed to play the character Jimmy the Toucan. Rewriting that script knowing Marlon was going to be saying all those lines, it was absolutely heaven. Getting Marlon to do things was sometimes like turning around an aircraft carrier because he had a way he wanted to do it. But you could get him there. He was terribly respectful and funny. But Marlon's life was not funny. He had problems with his daughter Cheyenne Brando from the actor's third wife, Tarita Tarapaya. Brando was never in favor of having his children, who grew up on the island of Tahiti, come to the United States. In a 1976 interview, he stated, "I don't think I will let them, Cheyenne and Tehuti, go to the States. As Tahitians, they are too trusting. They would be destroyed in the pace of life in the States." The girl left school and began a modeling career. Addicted to drugs, she began dating Dag Drolet and became pregnant in 1989. At the request of Marlon Brando, the couple moved to the United States to his home on Mulholland Drive to await the birth of their child. And now, after Marlon again refused to visit Cheyenne during the filming of The Freshman in Toronto, the girl had a serious car accident while driving her Jeep. She broke her jaw and had a laceration under the eye and a torn ear. Marlon Brando brought his daughter to Los Angeles for extensive reconstructive and cosmetic surgery. The accident effectively ended her modeling career. After the accident, Cheyenne went into depression. In an interview, the girl said, "I've come to despise my father for the way he ignored me when I was a child. He came to the island maybe once a year, but really didn't seem to care whether he saw me or not. He wanted us, but he didn't want us." But the worst was later. After moving into a house on Mulholland Drive, the older half-brother of the girl, Christian Brando, entered into a confrontation with Dag Drolet. According to Cheyenne, Drolet was physically abusing her. Christian took out a gun, and Dag tried to take it away and was mortally wounded. After his death, Christian was charged with first-degree murder and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Prosecutors tried twice to subpoena Cheyenne to testify, but she refused and fled to Tahiti. There, on June 26, 1990, she gave birth to a son, Tuki Brando, after which she tried to commit suicide twice and was hospitalized for detoxification in a psychiatric hospital.
Has come to my house. It has also come to the house of Mr. Jack Drolet in Tahiti, and we must stand up to it. We must just be strong, and I think there's a family with love and
By that time, Brando's weight fluctuations that accompanied him in his later years had reached their maximum. The actor weighed more than 300 pounds and suffered from type 2 diabetes. He attributed it to years of stress-induced overeating, but despite everything, Marlon continued acting and played a supporting role in a historical adventure film directed by John Glenn, Christopher Columbus, The Discovery, for which he received a Golden Raspberry nomination. In 1995, Brando met Johnny Depp on the set of the romantic comedy drama Don Juan de Marco. The film did not have enough superstars, but against the backdrop of the actor's recent work, it was still a success, especially in commercial terms. Critics didn't like the film, but were pleased with the performance of Brando and Depp. Moreover, these two also enjoyed working together and became good friends. Marlon admired Depp's acting skills and his down-to-earth attitude behind the scenes, and Depp, like almost any actor, admired Brando. They had a lot in common. They were both born in working-class families and achieved success in Hollywood through training and hard work. They talked on the phone weekly and even lived somewhere close to each other. Marlon agreed to star in Depp's directorial debut, the independent neo-Western film The Brave. Depp co-wrote the script with his brother and acted with Brando. The premiere was at the Cannes Film Festival in 1997, but having received negative reviews, the film was never released in the United States. At the same time, it was shown in cinemas in other countries. Years after Drolet's death and the trial of her half-brother Christian, Cheyenne's mental health steadily declined. She repeatedly ended up in drug rehabilitation and psychiatric hospitals, and even publicly accused her father of molesting her, and also blamed him for Drolet's death. Marlon Brando denied both accusations. In the end, Cheyenne was officially diagnosed with schizophrenia. She was isolated from everyone and lost custody of her son Tuki. On April 16, 1995, Cheyenne hanged herself at her mother's home in Punawaya, Tahiti. Her half-brother Christian and Marlon Brando were not able to attend her funeral. Meanwhile, in 1995, Brando first appeared in the distant homeland of his ancestors, Ireland, where he gave an interview. "I have never been so happy in my life. When I got off the plane, I had this rush of emotion. I have never felt at home in a place as I do here. I am seriously contemplating Irish citizenship." And despite this little happiness, the tragic events that accompanied Marlon's life over the past few years have given their result. The actor starred in The Island of Dr. Moreau, which was met with some of the worst reviews of his career and won a Golden Raspberry for Worst Supporting Actor. And 2 years later, his appearance in Free Money was so bad that he was hardly recognized. Marlon's last film appearance was the 2001 heist film The Score. The actor's partners on the set were Robert De Niro, Edward Norton, and Angela Bassett. The film was directed by Frank Oz, with whom Brando repeatedly quarreled, calling him Miss Piggy, the Muppet which Oz played for 15 years. Brando's bullying of Oz for his work with the puppets became so obnoxious that Robert De Niro, who also acted as an assistant director, was forced to direct Brando instead, with Oz giving him instructions via a headset. Marlon was quite eccentric, walking around the set in his underwear because of the hot weather and refusing to act when Frank Oz took on directing. And in his final scene, Marlon refused to smile, so his smile had to be digitally added in post-production. Later, Oz admitted that it was his fault for not finding an understanding and respectful approach to Brando. Critics received the film positively, but it barely grossed its colossal budget. In general, we can say that Brando ended his career on a good note.
Et voilà. À votre santé, monsieur Max. Voilà.
Bermuda.
He had developed a reputation for being difficult on set, often unwilling or unable to remember his lines, and more interested not in filming but in making strange demands on directors. Moreover, his eccentric and unpredictable behavior made his assistant Alice Marchik quit. All the time, the actor was also worried that he could not show the importance of solving the problem of the genocide of the indigenous peoples of America.
You are making me really angry now, because I want to tell you in simple chapter and verse that I have tried to get on before the American public, before the world, a movie about the American Indians and the manner in which we committed as a country genocide upon those people, and I have been told to go take a flying you-know-what at a rolling donut.
In a 1989 interview, he was asked why he didn't make a film about it. The most recent role of Marlon Brando was Mrs. Sour in the unreleased animated film Big Bug Man. The actor voiced a female character for the first time, and besides him, Brendan Fraser worked on the project. It's a pity that the cartoon had never been released. In his later years, the actor often visited the Neverland Ranch of his close friend Michael Jackson. There, he could rest for weeks, and in addition, he participated in Michael's 30th anniversary celebration concert and starred in his 13-minute video for the song You Rock My World. The actor's son Miko worked for Jackson for several years as a bodyguard and was also his friend. In 2004, Marlon Brando signed with Tunisian film director Rita Behi and began work on a project called Brando in Brando. Working on the script for the film, the actor died a week before the expected start of filming, July 1st, 2004. Rita Behi promised to continue working on the project as a tribute to the great actor, renaming the film Always Brando. The initial cause of death was not publicly named since the actor's lawyer referred to confidentiality. But since the actor suffered from diabetes and liver cancer, it was determined that Brando died of respiratory failure due to pulmonary fibrosis with congestive heart failure at UCLA Medical Center. Shortly before his death, the actor needed an oxygen mask to breathe, but he was able to record one phrase for an audio appearance in The Godfather: The Game as Vito Corleone. In addition, according to the actor's longtime friend from the films, Carl Malden, a frustrated Marlon phoned him a couple of weeks before his death and said that he continues to fall. However, when a friend wanted to visit him to support him, the actor refused. Apparently, Brando refused to allow oxygen tubes to be inserted into his lungs, which was the only way to prolong his life. Marlon Brando was cremated, and his ashes were laid with those of Wally Cox. Soon, their ashes were scattered partly in Tahiti and partly in Death Valley. Nowadays, Brando's personality is not an empty phrase for many, and his contribution to cinematography cannot be overestimated. Marlon Brando lived in several eras of cinema and participated in the creation of several cult and extremely successful films. But most importantly, Despite the difficulties and personal problems, he tried to remain a cheerful person, but in recent years it was more and more difficult for the actor. We will forever remember him as a great actor and an eccentric prankster who never let anyone lose heart all his life. The lives of Hollywood actors are full of contradictions and dramas and are not always as carefree as they might seem. We tell in our other videos about what famous personalities had to go through to stay in the cruel cinematic world and how they ruined their careers with their own hands. Click on the icon that appeared on your screen and find out more. But before that, don't forget to like this video. Biographer was with you. See you soon.